I've played some bad games in this playthrough. I've played some appalling games. I even endured Sonic R, for crying out loud. But I was still a little bit apprehensive when picking up this game, Batman and Robin, for the Sony PlayStation 1. Now we all know how bad licensed games can be. Even if the film, TV series, book, food stuff that it's based on is amazing, they're usually rushed, badly designed and hard to play. Some of them are just reskinned versions of other older, better games, and some of them are just the most generic thing ever. And that's when we're talking about good franchises. There are the occasional ones that slip through the cracks. I mean, the Discworld games are brilliant, partly because they're based on the whole world rather than a specific book, and partly because there's a lot of love and care has gone into them. There's a lot of Star Wars games out there and an awful lot of them are good. Even GoldenEye 007, as we all know, is a bona fide classic, and while I am rubbish at it and cannot play it for love nor money, it is still an example of a good licensed game. Unfortunately, they are few and far between. But this is an adaptation of one of the worst received films of all time. A film that currently has a rating on Rotten Tomatoes of 11%. This game is based on the film that killed the comic book movie genre for years. So I went into this expecting this to be terrible. But you know what? I've played worse. Most licensed games tend to have a habit of just plucking their characters from the air and forcing them into a standard game template. And in the 8 and 16-bit eras, those were 2D platformers. Everything that came out was a 2D platformer. And then in the PlayStation era, all of a sudden, there were lots of other game genres for people to pick from. And as a result, you got tie-ins that, while they may still have been rushed and not brilliant, were anything but lazy. They really tried with this game, and the best comparison I can make is that they tried to make a game that's kind of like Arkham Asylum, just 11 years too early and based on a really, really bad film. So let's start at the beginning with an opening FMV cutscene in which we see a car chase and we're introduced to the villain, Mr. Freeze. By introduced, I mean he gets out of a car. And then, after a loading screen, you find yourself in control of the Dark Knight himself, Batman. And what's the first thing you want to do when you take control of Batman? Well, hopefully it's read half a novel's worth of expositionary text, because that's what's going to happen at the start of this game. Also, can I just ask for a minute, why is the Batcave decorated entirely in chrome? We know Batman's favourite colours. Black, very dark grey. Chrome is not on that list. So your first task is to go to the Bat computer and examine the clues. So you walk over to it and encounter another loading screen. This is clearly going to be a running theme in this game. So once you're in the Bat computer, you get to interact with an interface that looks almost entirely exactly unlike Windows 3.1. So you'll examine the clues that you've got on the Bat computer. At the moment you have one clue! Half a poster, on which Mr. Freeze has conveniently written the time he intends to attack the museum. Which is always helpful. That's some great villaining right there, Mr. Freeze. If in doubt, always write down the time you intend to commit a crime on something that's really obvious, so that when somebody finds it, they know exactly what you're going to do. Top works, 10 out of 10. So after you've established this, you get the Batmobile, the most powerful car in all of fiction. You put your foot down, you drive out of the cave and discover that it can get pushed to the side by a very small ice cream truck. I'm starting to doubt the awesome power of this version of Batman. But not long after, I'm driving past a building that turns out to be on fire, and the little box pops up at the bottom that tells me I can look for clues. So I stop and try and figure out how to get out the car. How do you get out the car? I couldn't figure it out. After about 5 minutes worth of button mashing, I decided to leave people in that building to burn to their deaths and carry on for a main story mission. And before long, I arrived at the museum, where I still had to get out the car. Several minutes of panicked button mashing later, I successfully exited the vehicle and walked up to the museum doors to be greeted by another loading screen. And then I'm in the museum, and the first thing that happens is I get beaten up by 2 thugs, and I'm trying to fight back, but there doesn't appear to be an easy way to do so. All I've managed to do so far is jump over 1 thug and then walk casually backwards. I have to look in the instruction manual, aren't I? Well, that made no sense. It turns out you have to decide whether you're running or fighting, as each of the face buttons has 2 commands mapped to it. One if you're in fight mode, and the other if you're in move/defend mode. That's right, you can't move much at all while you are fighting, which is really helpful in an action-based game. In fact, let's talk about the controls for a minute, shall we? They are terrible. Really, really terrible. They're slow, they're unresponsive, nothing does what you expect it to do. Holding backwards doesn't make you turn around like it does in almost all other third-person games ever made. It simply makes you step very slowly backwards, which, as you can imagine, is entirely unhelpful. Oh, and did I mention that run is also on a trigger, but it's not just hold the trigger to run, you have to turn run mode on. Why? The camera angles don't help these controls either. Most of the time the camera's up here behind you, which is great, it's what you expect in a third-person game. And then sometimes, for no apparent reason and with absolutely no warning, the game switches to fixed camera angles, Resident Evil style. And these fixed camera angles, I mean, they work in something like Resident Evil where they're trying to build the tension, make you scared, it's a horror game. But in an action game, it's just weird. So after fighting with the controls and defeating the 2 henchmen, I walked up to the door of the room that the diamond is kept in and was told, I can't go in to prevent the burglary yet because I'm too early. Yes, that's right, too early. I had to go into the menu and change the in-game clock to the time that I knew Mr. Freeze was going to be there so I could get in. I couldn't go in early, scope the place out, maybe prevent the burglary before it got serious, because that would be sensible. And one thing this game does not do is sensible. So after fixing the clock, I enter the room and discover the alarm is going off. You better get used to that sound because it doesn't stop. Once inside the room, I keep finding clues, which I assume are going to be relevant when I make it back to the back computer. And after seeing off 1 henchman and then accidentally walking backwards through, over and off a staircase, I still can't get the hang of these bloody controls, I found myself at the podium with the diamond that Mr. Freeze wants to steal. But I still can't do anything. So then, over the course of the next 10 bloody minutes, I wandered aimlessly around the room, beating up every henchman that I found, until suddenly Mr. Freeze removed the force field around the diamond. Great, I thought, now's my chance, I can get in there and save it. So I ran down to the podium and I still couldn't do anything. Really, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Out of pure frustration, I ran around a bit more, found a couple of henchmen, one of whom killed me, which led me to a very strange death scene where Batman and Robin and Batgirl, who by this point hasn't even put on the cowl and cape, are locked in ice cabinets and frozen to death. Yay! This game's for kids. And then I'm dumped unceremoniously back to the menu screen. There's no live system, no continues, nothing. I failed once and now I'm right back at the beginning again. So I'll be honest with you, it's kind of where I gave up. And even in spite of all of this, it's not as easy to bash the game as I thought it was going to be. Yes, it's based on some truly questionable source material. Yes, the controls are absolutely awful. The gameplay is dull, repetitive, and you never understand what you're trying to do. But you can't fault the ambition. In fact, I'd give them 10 out of 10 for effort because they seem to have really tried. Sadly, I can only give them 2 out of 10 for the actual game. And the only reason it's getting a score that high is because the Batmobile sections are quite fun, even if absolutely everything can run you off the road and it feels like the tyres are carved entirely out of butter. I managed to play this game for about 20 minutes or so, and while it was interesting, I really don't see a situation where I'm ever going to play it again. So please do let me know if you or anyone else you know or somebody you hate might like a copy of Batman and Robin for the PS1, because it's a truly terrible game and I won't be playing it again. Thanks for watching my video, I hope you enjoyed it. I've just rebranded the channel, so hopefully there'll be a lot more content going forwards. I've put links to a couple of older videos on here. One of them's a Brawny's great video game playthrough, and one of them's a review of some comics, so do have a look at those. And do please click the subscribe button, give me a like, give me a comment, let me know what you liked and what you didn't like. With your feedback, I can make videos that everybody loves. Well, maybe not everybody, but I can try.